You're on the midweek edition of Legal AF with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and Michael Popok here on the Midas Touch Network. It's very difficult in this time to set our docket for what we're going to talk about because with this rogue, out of control, and lawless presidency, things happen at the minute, at the moment, even while we're on the air sometimes. Court orders are dropped or new issues happen, but we'll do our best to curate for you the things on this Wednesday that we think are important for you to know. Of course, we're going to start off with talking about the tragedy in Minnesota with Renee Nicole Good being shot in the face multiple times by ICE agents. They say there's two sides to a story, but I don't really see it. Although Donald Trump has quickly sided with ICE, it sounds like this was an observer activist who was trying to get out of harm's way. And as she tried to back out and back up, the police, as she was moving away from them, shot her in the face and killed her. And she was there to observe ICE. And this is what happens when you put ICE and National Guard and law enforcement and hyped up emotions all in the same place at the same time. Tragedies will result. And it looks like we just had one in Minnesota. As we came on the air, Donald Trump filed a motion in Georgia a day after Jan 6th, asking for $6.2 million be awarded to him from the Fulton County DA office's budget to reimburse him for attorney's fees for a case that was ultimately dismissed, not because he was found innocent, but because the Supreme Court in Georgia didn't like the fact that the prosecutor had a relationship with someone in her office. Lindsey Halligan in the news again for all the wrong reasons. We now have our sixth judge in the Eastern District of Virginia, this time a Trump-appointed one, Judge Novak, who is not happy that Lindsey Halligan continues to have a badge that says U.S. Attorney, signs pleadings that says U.S. Attorney, and is impersonating and masquerading as a U.S. Attorney. 5 other judges, including the chief judge in Eastern District, have questioned members of the Department of Justice as to why this still happens and have expressed their displeasure with the fact that having been found to be illegally and illicitly appointed back in November the 24th by a senior federal judge, Lindsey Halligan is still signing pleadings, appearing in cases, and running the office as the U.S. Attorney. And we have a new order we'll go over in detail that sets a trap for Lindsey Halligan. I think she needs to resign rather than comply directly with this order, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then we've got what else? Missing Epstein files all over again, the shape-shifting number. First it was, well, we found 1 million extra documents after Midas Touch, and our podcast partner, Ben Meisalis, pointed out one of the documents of the 12,000 that have been produced and said, what about this million that this guy, this Yahoo's talking about in the Maxwell case? That hasn't been reviewed. So we thought, oh shit, it's 1 million. It's probably 10 million. And when we're talking about the numbers, just to keep apples to apples here, this is documents, not pages. And it looks like the average document is about 10 pages. So if we say they've produced 12,000 documents, that's about 120,000 pages. That's just 0.06% of the 5 million that they admitted have not been reviewed. A week later during the holidays, Todd Blanche said 5.2 million. But then in a new filing just a couple of days ago, they lowered the number by almost half. Why? How? Who trusts the Department of Justice? Where'd the missing documents go? We'll talk about all of that and a lot more here on the first issue of Midweek after the new year. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Michael Popok. How are you?
I'm Karen Agnifilo. I'm doing fantastic.
Good.
Let's dive in. So as we came on the air, we have this tragedy that's been unfolding late in the day in Minnesota. And now you've got the political battle that Donald Trump wanted. You've got Tim Walz, who, because of his own personal decision-making, probably related to some sort of fraud issues going on in Minnesota, has said he's not going to run for a third term. in Minnesota, which is not that unusual. No, like very few governors get a third term period, let alone a third term in Minnesota. But I thought that was going to be the story coming on the air. But then it became ICE in operations in Minnesota. And we know that's one of Donald Trump's favorite targets. You know, there's a congresswoman who's from Minnesota that's Muslim, and a tragedy occurred. And instantly, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and others took sides and sided with ICE and said it was an attack on ICE. And the state representatives who have seen the video and have researched what happened on the ground immediately said ICE was at fault and that this was a tragedy that should not have unfolded. What have you picked up about it, and where do you think things should go in terms of the investigation about what happened? Now you got all the social media postings, but there's a person who's dead. There are there's the state looking into crimes. There's civil cases related to her loss. Lay it out for our audience.
First of all, it's so tragic and so horrific that this poor woman, who's a mother of a young child who was at school at the time, was killed because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And luckily there's video, and I think the video is what is going to be illustrative of what exactly happened. And, Asha Rangappa, who's a former FBI agent, Yale law professor, and somebody who's a frequent commentator, she posted something on Blue Sky that says, law enforcement officers cannot use deadly force against a fleeing person unless they have a reasonable belief that the individual poses a danger to others, e.g., they know the person is armed. If in a vehicle, the person must be threatening to use deadly force with the vehicle or other means. So that's from the DOJ policy, but DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, which is what ICE is under, has also, she posted, it says, fleeing subjects, deadly force shall not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing subject. So I think that this is going to be a really, really interesting, to say the least, for the Trump administration to justify this. This is a woman in a car. It looks like she was, frankly, from the videos that I've seen, it looks like she was trying to get out of the way. That she was blocking, and they were telling her to get out of the way, and she was trying. And then they started telling her to get out of the car, and she was just trying to get out of the way, and they shot and killed her. So from what it looks like right now, it looks pretty bad. And I think there's going to be an investigation into what happened here. And I mean, in normal times, the agents would frankly be worried that they could be prosecuted for something like this. I don't know what this, I think we can all predict what this administration would do, but this doesn't even seem to be remotely within the bounds of legal justification or what law enforcement is permitted to do while they are, or ICE or Department of Homeland Security or any federal agent is permitted to do. You really can't do that. I mean, obviously, if the facts come out that she was trying to run them over with the car, that's different because that's you're using your vehicle as a deadly weapon or a dangerous instrument. But it doesn't appear that that's at all what happened. And frankly, from what's coming out so far about the victim, again, she's just a mom like anybody else with a kid in school and who happens to be in Minnesota and potentially going to see what's going on at the, where ICE is there. And look, this is one of the dangers with having federal law enforcement come in and do these unnecessary, hostile, aggressive actions in cities and locations that frankly don't want them. And Minnesota is one of the places that does not want them enforcing there and does not want this because this is the kind of thing that can happen.
Absolutely. Her mother is quoted as saying that Renee was one of the kindest people I've ever known. She was extremely compassionate. She's taken care of people all her life. She was loving, forgiving, and affectionate. She was an amazing human being. And it is a tragedy of the Trump administration's amped up ICE officers is what it looks like that has taken the life. And it just the depravity and the lack of heart and caring by the Trump administration on full display again, to immediately side with ICE as some sort of attack on ICE rather than on the death of this person. It's going to be up to the lawyers, and there are many fine lawyers in Minnesota that handle cases like this, cases of government and police brutality, who are going to have to bring the truth out through their own forensics, through their own testimony and the like, and get whatever justice is possible. I mean, there's no real justice for the killing of this 37-year-old mother, but it's going to be up to the civil law enforcement. I'm sure the state of Minnesota's Bureau of Investigation, the MBI, I guess, MBI, will have to get involved, and then Donald Trump will do everything he can to make it political, because they'll never admit defeat. They'll never admit they did anything wrong. They're constantly going after Tim Walz. They're constantly going after the Attorney General there. I'm going to try to get Keith Ellison on, who we've interviewed before, to talk about these issues soon. But you're exactly right. The perfect storm of to have a terrible event like this happen is when you put ill-trained ICE and other personnel who are not used to working with the public, don't do crowd control, don't know how to de-escalate, whether it's law enforcement, ICE, National Guard, Army, or whatever, and you put them with the public, then you add to it amped up emotions over certain things. And in this case, perhaps somebody driving the wrong way, you could easily drive into one of these stops the way that they're set up in these states. And then, your adrenaline takes over, your heart is racing, you can hear the blood rushing in your brain, in your head, you're not thinking clearly, you're being barked out by people who have weapons pointed at you, and bad things happen, as they just did. And so we're going to have to make sure that justice is done for Renee Nicole Good, and that this administration is brought to heel as well. They're out of control around the world, and they're certainly taking it out on Americans. May I remind them that she is an American citizen. She's not a migrant. She's not Tren de Aragua. She's just a nice lady that lived in Minnesota. Okay, and you owe her, and you owe the rest of America something for her. I mean, she didn't intend her death to be a cause celeb, but it is now, and so we have to get behind it. And great things have to come in her name, and we'll do our part here on Legal AF as well. And then you got the depravity of it all. I want to talk about the Jan 6th hearing too. We ran it on Legal AF. There actually is Kwame Raoul from Illinois, and he, along with dozens of other people, testified at the Jan 6 Oversight Committee hearing yesterday. It was really getting the old gang back together again of the Jan 6 committee. You got Benny Thompson, you got Jamie Raskin, Kinzinger, all together, but then a lot of witnesses who testified as well. And some people might be thinking, well, what's the purpose? The purpose is we can't just let Donald Trump kind of get away with insurrection and rewrite the history books and try to distract America from his scandalous administration and criminal administration, because he's busy trying to take over Venezuela for its oil fields, or Greenland for its strategic purposes, and he just gets to put Jan 6 in his rearview mirror. No, and if he's going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Army or of the Declaration of Independence, we get to commemorate things that are demonstrative of how rogue and illegal and immoral Donald Trump is. So Jan 6 committee hearings, we'll talk about now. Jack Smith last week, 9 hours of testimony. This all matters. What was your takeaway from the Jan 6th hearing? What did you find to be moving? And again, we had that split screen, Proud Boys marching at the exact same time, mobilized by Donald Trump and MAGA, the Trump administration changing the website as the hearings were going on to kind of rewrite history. We know he's already been erasing history at the Smithsonian as it relates to the Jan 6th, the insurrection. What was your takeaway from the power of the hearings?
I think first of all, it was so important that on January 6th, this moment is commemorated, that it's not forgotten, that we do not allow Trump to whitewash and gloss over the events of that day. What I did to commemorate the day was I actually watched, there's like an amazing, I think it's like 40-minute video that Midas posted, that's never been seen video before, of an individual who had a camera and somehow for more than 30 minutes filmed this moment of the mob trying to get into the Capitol. And it was so chilling, bone chilling, and in a way that the hearings can never quite do because it's a hearing. But you watch that video and you realize how violent, how lawless, how terrifying that must have been. You see people in full riot gear, law enforcement, Capitol law enforcement, screaming, bloody, crying. It was terrifying. And you see the crowd in unison, just using the full force of this crowd, moving together backward and forward to try and use the momentum of the giant crowd to push their way into the Capitol. And what these true heroes from the Capitol Police and law enforcement were doing to protect the Capitol. And just seeing those videos, watching the hearing, hearing the stories, Trump can do whatever he wants. He can call this a beautiful day. I don't even know the terms he uses to, calls these people patriots, peaceful protests. You watch these videos and it will remind people and remind you exactly what it was. And it's literally the embodiment of what Trump is doing to the world right now. He's using brute force to basically take over countries, depose countries' leaders, steal oil from Venezuela. He's going to try to steal Greenland. He's going to basically alienate us from all of NATO. And he just, the people, when they say, when they protest and say no kings, and there are people who say, oh, that's an exaggeration, we don't have kings. He is certainly acting as if he's a king and a dictator all at once. And so it's just Jan 6 was a window into what we're living in on a bigger global scale today, that people just want to, by brute force, take what they want, whether it belongs to them or not. And it is just disgusting and disgraceful. And I think we can't forget about it. We have to remember it, and we have to have it color exactly how we view everything that is happening right now in the world, because this is literally a fight for our democracy, is what we're in right now. I am just appalled every single day when I see what Trump is doing as a continuation of trying to steal that election through force and brute force, and then through lies, and trying to completely gaslight the American people who can see the videos for themselves of what was happening. And that's what he's doing with every other move that he's doing right now all across the world. Whether it's, you can dislike Maduro, you can think he's a terrible person, and at the same time also see that basically saying this is part of a war on drugs, that this is a complete lie. This is nothing more than a grab for oil. And I am worried about Cuba, I'm worried about Greenland, and I'm worried about all the other places that Trump is essentially saying the quiet part out loud. And, we are in a precarious place. And as bad as Jan 6 was, frankly, that was nothing compared to what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to continue to speak to history and to speak to today's voter. about what happened on Jan 6th, it's important, especially when you have, I mean, would there be a Jan 6th commemorative oversight hearing if Donald Trump had not been reelected? Maybe, probably not. It really is a counterweight to Donald Trump. I mean, many things right now exist because they are a counterweight to Donald Trump. I have a working theory that Pope Leo, the first American Pope from Chicago, who is a leftist, a Marxist, a man of the cloth, was chosen by the conclave on purpose because of the existence of Donald Trump. Yeah, there are many things that exist that would not exist but for Donald Trump. So it's important that while he's in the White House and continues to be as lawless and rogue and out of control as he is, with nothing really other than the public, the crowds, and the courts, except for the Supreme Court at this juncture, to hold him back, that we hold events like that people come and testify again, like day 9, effectively, of the Jan 6 committee. They did 8 full days. This was like the 9th day, but very, very important. And then, of course, I didn't want to undersell, the Venezuela attack. We all see it for what it is. Has nothing to do with freedom being on the march, has nothing to do with installing a democracy where there once was a dictatorship. It has everything to do with kicking a dictatorship in the nuts, decapitating its immediate leader, and then having the remnants of that dictatorship, which is illegal and illicit and not for the will of the people, play ball with big oil, which is controlling Donald Trump and Marco Rubio about their interests. You see big oil popping up today with, we're owed billions of dollars from Venezuela from having our assets nationalized 20 years ago. So now we're using the weight of the U.S. military, putting military people in harm's way in order to do the bidding of big oil. Now, I know some people are going to write, Popok, you're naive. We've always had business and the industrial military complex dominating our foreign and military policy. And that is true. But this is so transparently on display right now. And Marco Rubio, took a lot of umbrage with that there is no plan to control or run while they're busy trying to chase after two of 14 tankers. They made a big deal out of it. We caught the 2, one with a Russian escort with a sub. What about the other 14 that made it out? But again, we are just trying to take a straw and suck the oil out of Venezuela and then turn our sights while he's got momentum, which is what he did in the first 2 days of his original term with his executive orders, to now turn his sights to Greenland. He's an idiot when it comes to Greenland. There's plenty of reporting out there now that since a 1952 agreement that was signed by Truman or Eisenhower, we have a lot of say militarily over Greenland, even though it's independent and a protectorate of our NATO ally, Denmark. So we didn't have to do all of this. We could have gotten effectively what we wanted by way of this agreement, which Donald Trump probably doesn't even know about and learned about it like we did today, but it's been on the books for, since 1952. No, he's got to do let's put NATO over my knee and break it in half. Let's attack an ally. Let's threaten them. Let's spend taxpayer dollars to buy them. You don't have to do any of that. Just go read the 1952 agreement, figure out what you want strategically, and that's it. You're done. We don't want to own Greenland. And the people there and pay them. They're getting paid from Denmark. And we don't want that to happen. But this is what, when a dictator is on the march and his own Congress is unwilling to stop him for their own political gain, this is what you got. And now we got to see what the United States Supreme Court's going to do about it. And just a little bit of a headline or a heads up before the break here. Friday, 1 or 2 major Supreme Court decisions are about to be dropped. We've been waiting on the tariff decision. It's about ready. My oven timer has gone off. It's about ready. I think it could be on Friday. And we've been waiting on the Voting Rights Act, the Calais case out of Louisiana, which is also overdue. They've announced they're dropping their opinions on Friday. Could be both.
What about birthright citizenship?
Well, they haven't. That has to be briefed and argued. That hasn't been briefed and argued. In other words, they've said they're going to take it, but it's not done yet. It's not out of the can yet. So no, that we would have covered it on legal AF had we had an oral argument on birthright citizenship. So, but there are major hearings this month. Lisa Cook fighting for her life and for hours on the Federal Reserve to stop Donald Trump's takeover of the Federal Reserve, and the Open Markets Committee that sets interest rates. That's this month. Transgender athletes in schools is this month, starting next week. So we have a lot to cover. And so Legal AF is the place to do it. We have a great announcement for Legal AF. As people may know, the American Civil Liberties Union is joining to give regular commentary and videos by their lawyers about the cases that they're fighting, the 130, 140 cases that the American Civil Liberties Union is fighting every day for democracy. They're joining, I think, next week with their first video. And between the ACLU and Democracy Forward, led by Skye Perryman, who I had the pleasure of interviewing. It's going up now, or it went up a little bit earlier on Legal AF YouTube channel, and the Democratic Attorneys General. Hopefully we'll one day include your buddy, Michael, what's his last name? Doherty. That whole group represents 3/4 of the major lawsuits against the Trump administration. And they're all going to be on Legal AF, continuing to brief our audience. So now's the time. Become a member of the Legal AF community. You can become a paid member of the YouTube channel. We have a new group of work related to that, and things that our paid members will be entitled to, like bonus interviews and bonus videos that are up now. We've got the Legal AF Substack. Almost 3,000 people became paid members from the holiday times till now. We're running a sale, 20% off in honor of Jan 6th and the people that tried to hold the line and trying to rein in Donald Trump. So 20% off annual membership on Legal AF Substack as well. And then, of course, we've got our pro-democracy sponsors, some of which have been with us, 5-6 years, and some that are new. But the great thing about them is they know what our audience is all about. We vibrate on the same frequency, and they want to be here. They know what we're saying, and generally, and they want to be here with it. So let's take our first break. New year, new chew for your dog, or the dog you love like family. If you're upgrading what goes into your body in 2026, why are so many dogs still eating mystery kibble? Meet Sundays for Dogs. Sundays was founded by veterinarian and mom, Dr. Tori Waxman, tired of premium dog food full of fillers and synthetics. So she created Sundays, air-dried real food made in a human-grade kitchen with the same care you'd use to cook for the people you love. Every bite of Sundays is clean and made from 100% meat and superfoods with no kibble. No fillers, no weird ingredients, just real nutrient-rich food. Sundays invest 50 times more in its ingredients than kibble or other brands because dogs deserve better than cost-cutting. And it's easy. You just scoop and serve. No freezer, no thawing, no prep, no mess. Even if you don't have a dog of your own, you know one who deserves more health, more energy, a softer coat, fewer allergens, and more happy years. Make the switch to Sundays. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf30 and get 30% off your first 3 orders. Or you can use code legalaf30 at checkout. That's 30% off your first 3 orders at sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf30. sundaysfordogs.com/legalaf30 or use code legalaf30 at checkout. We spend so much time anti-aging our face, creams, Botox, lasers, but the scalp ages 6 times faster. That made me rethink everything. So I tried Array, and I can genuinely endorse it. Easy routine, lightweight products, and my hair already looks healthier and shinier. And to be clear, Array doesn't stop grays, it slows or delays them. The science is the cool part. One gene causes 30% of graying. 70% isn't genetics at all. They work from the inside and outside. The Not Today Gray supplements support melanin production at the root by filling nutrient gaps. The To the Root serum, powered by Melanine Complex, is oil-free, daily, and supports thicker, fuller, shinier hair while slowing new gray growth in 3 to 6 months with consistency. Look, I know it sounds wild, but Array is clinically proven to work. 88% of users saw less new gray growth in their study, and over 300,000 people are already using it. Starting early matters. Most people cover grays, but you can actually slow their progression. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off by using code LEGALAF at array.com. Just head to arey.com and use code LEGALAF, and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Welcome back, and thank you for being such fervent supporters of independent media and independent commentary, by your support of Legal AF and this podcast and the Legal AF ecosystem that we've described. So Georgia, to help Donald Trump several months ago, passed a statute that allows people who were, prosecuted unfairly to try to get attorney's fees. It was made for Donald Trump, obviously, by, it's a red state, even though we try to make it purple and blue, it's a red state. The legislature's red, the governor's red. And so they passed it, and it kind of slipped under the radar. We were like, well, that's interesting. But now we know why. Right on time. Steve Sadow, the local lawyer in Georgia for Donald Trump, filed an application or a motion to be supported, I guess, by an affidavit showing that the lawyers there, and I find this to be hard to believe, the lawyers in Steve Sadow and a couple of their lawyers spent $6.2 million to defend that case that never went to trial. It seems a little high. And again, if they're entitled to fees, it's generally reasonable fees if they're entitled to fees at all. But, leave it to Donald Trump, doesn't care about the optics. Basically, the day of Jan 6th, he wants to remind everybody and step on the news cycle by filing a fee application on purpose for $6.2 million in fee recovery. He's also doing the same thing in the United States government, where he's suing his own government and us as taxpayers for many multiples of that for the Jack Smith prosecutions. That is wending its way through the Federal Tort Claims Act process, and then will eventually become a lawsuit where it'll be Donald Trump versus the United States of America while he's the president of the United States of America. What you make about all that? You may want to remind people, Karen, because you were very, very passionate, as we all should be, about the Fani Willis takedown by the Supreme Court in Georgia and by even the trial judge there for her doing nothing more than maybe a human resource violation of dating in the workplace. Certainly didn't impact the evidence against Donald Trump, the RICO conspiracy, or the facts. And just to remind our audience, many people pled guilty to that same indictment. Lawyers representing Donald Trump. Ken Chesborough pled guilty. Jenna Ellis, guilty. Sidney Powell, guilty. Why don't you take it from there?
It's disgusting. It's one more example of Donald Trump trying to steal money from taxpayers or from average people, because that's where it's coming from, whether it's in his DOJ case where he's suing the federal government, who will, of course, settle with him, right? Because he controls the federal government. He controls the DOJ. So they're going to settle with him. And as you said, this statute in Georgia, I'm sure, was passed specifically for him, because normally you can't do that in criminal cases. Normally, prosecutors enjoy prosecutorial immunity, and you can't sue them, and you can't sue them civilly for just doing their job. And so this is very much another way that Donald Trump is going to get rich off the backs of average Americans and the people of Georgia, the people of the United States of America. And when he goes in with his chainsaw and Doge, whatever happened to Doge, I don't even know if it exists anymore, trying to save all this money. That is just all fake and just not true. He is going to steal money from your and my pockets every way that he can, just like he's going to steal oil from Venezuela and he's going to steal minerals from Greenland, which is why, for example, I think it is why he wants to take Greenland in addition to, it's not about the military, because as you said, Popok, he could just, because of that 1951 agreement, he could put more military there just by asking. I think he wants to steal the natural resources of Greenland as well. And I think you're going to see not just his friends and family getting rich, but himself getting rich off of that, just like he's doing. And he shows you every single day as what he's doing, and by getting these attorney's fees. So, I mean, it's appalling and it's disgraceful. And, you know, the Georgia prosecution was a legitimate prosecution. I think there was something like, what was it, 20 something defendants that she brought, the sweeping RICO indictment. If you remember, it was the phone call to the Secretary of State for Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, that Trump called and said, find me 11,780 votes. And, you know, there was no doubt with the fake elector scheme and everything else that went on there. That was a sweeping RICO indictment. And I think if that case ever went to trial, it would have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond any doubt. As you said, several people already pled guilty. And frankly, that was not dismissed on the merits. That was not dismissed because he was not guilty. And frankly, there was never even an opportunity to do a presidential immunity analysis, because some of that was clearly a campaign, Donald Trump as a candidate, not him as acting in any way as president. And there was no way that that they could even get to that point because of this complete distraction over a workplace relationship, which is all this was. This was not a relationship. This was not a conflict of interest with Fonnie Willis having a relationship with, say, defense attorney or a witness or a judge. So those things could be conflicts of interest. This was two very senior people, not a subordinate type of relationship. These were two very senior people having a consensual adult relationship, and somehow that became, you know, unmarried. This was not an affair. This was not in any way scandalous, and certainly nothing compared to what Donald Trump has been found liable for doing and has been accused of doing by many, 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 many women. So the double and triple standard here for a woman prosecutor, a woman of color prosecutor, it's just, that was a whole disgrace. And watching that, you know, pearl clutching takedown that everyone did of her. Oh my God, you know, she had an affair. She didn't have an affair. She had a relationship with a colleague, which is, frankly, that's where I met my husband, at work. It happens. Nothing wrong with it. And we've been married almost 30 years. So I think it's just disgraceful what happened to her, and the fact that now he's going to get attorney's fees or try to get attorney's fees, which is literally taking money from the people of Georgia, is just really appalling to me. And I hope somebody fights that, and I hope he doesn't get a dime.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to fight it in the streets in Georgia, and hopefully these are things that are wake-up calls.
Yeah, the midterms can't come soon enough.
No, I mean, as people, these are all badges. We in our business, we call it badges of fraud. These are like all badges of dishonesty, the stink of dishonesty, lawlessness, immorality. That is, I mean, he's just, if he was a military general and these were just medals and badges and ribbons related to his campaigns, he would just be, he'd be a 12-star general for how corrupt he is. But people have to remember this, which the polls say they are. I mean, I'm fascinated. I can't wait to see the polls following Venezuela and Greenland, which I don't think, first of all, MAGA is like, what the F? We voted you in for America first, to cut back on spending and to put the money into America. Spending is up 8% over Biden's last year, not down. That's a problem. He might have, he hasn't wrapped up wars. He's started them, bombing Iran, right? What he's doing to foment the war and keep it prolonged in Russia, Ukraine. Same thing, Gaza, Israel, now attacking Venezuela, which is now a nightmare. You know, there's that weird split screen, unfortunately, about what happened in Venezuela. You know, I live in Miami, where there's a large Venezuelan population. and Venezuelan American population. And there was immediate celebration, Viva Trump and hooray and down with Maduro. I get it. But then they woke up the next morning, literally, to realize that freedom was not being on the march, that their chosen leaders in Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado were being sidelined intentionally by the Trump administration because they obviously wouldn't play ball on the oil deal, and the oil play here for Donald Trump. And then it was like this deflation when they talked to people in Venezuela who were in country, and they're like, we sleep with one eye open. We have a suppression in the streets by the existing regime against protests and First Amendment expression. And all you have is little Marco Rubio saying, we're in control. We have a plan. I don't know why people think we don't have a plan. Yeah, I get the plan. The plan is destabilize Venezuela, cut off its oil supply to Cuba so that Marco Rubio can be a hero because he's always wanted to solve the Cuban problem, which is his ancestral home of his family, and then use that as a springboard. At the same time, apparently the Dunroe Doctrine just consists of, we control everything in the Western Hemisphere, and whatever happens out there, Europe, Asia, you're on your own. We'll fight here. We'll go after our allies here. We'll do things that are illegal and against international law and conventions. And you do you, Putin. You do you, China, in your spheres of influence. So now we've established spheres of influence rather than being the policeman of the world and the leader of the free world. We are no longer, that's not even a phrase you hear people use about Donald Trump. Doesn't even use it about himself. It was, until Trump became president, a common sobriquet or title for the president of the United States, the leader of the free world. But he doesn't want that. He's not making Venezuela free. He's making the corrupt regime be more responsive to his corrupt instincts and let big oil have their way on taxpayer dollars to benefit Donald Trump and his family, ultimately, as we always know.
What's ironic, Popok, is that by what you just said about how he arrested Maduro and his wife, but then left the vice president in place to take over.
Everybody.
Let the whole administration to take over. What that's going to do is that's going to undermine the prosecution here in New York, because if he was a legitimate ruler, he will have sovereign immunity.
That's right.
And by not putting in, if he had put in the democratically elected team and basically said this was never a legitimate administration, and but he's basically anointing them and anointing the Maduro regime, and by doing it that way, he is, Trump doesn't realize I think he's hurting the prosecution of Maduro, who could go free under sovereign immunity.
I agree. I mean, I did a hot take about the head of state immunity, which is similar to the immunity that Trump enjoys. And the more they talk about oil, and less about drug trafficking and machine guns, the more Maduro's team can, and I'm not trying to get Maduro out. I'm just laying out what could happen. Different than Manuel Noriega in Panama 36 years ago. Here, it's not regime change. And the more you don't talk about the indictment, which they almost never do now. It's Pam Bondi's not there. FBI's not there. This is a CIA, Department of Defense operation along with big oil. And so Maduro can say, this isn't about my criminality. This is about, they wanted to align Venezuela's political interests with the United States. And then they just play clip, Rubio, Trump. That's all they do. And they go, this is about me being the head of the state. This is not about me. And now, if the government is then going to have to come forward with its proof and its evidence that he lined his pockets and used narco terrorism to put money in his pockets, and maybe they have the goods on Maduro in terms of the money trail of the sale of cocaine and ending up in the pockets of Maduro and all of that. But, Trump should be careful about what he says. They can't stop talking. I mean, they just have logorrhea of the mouth, right? They can't stop talking about the mission, the accomplishment, but then it always slips out on Sunday morning talk shows or in press conferences when it's not about freedom. It's not about that. It's about oil. And as you said, I think that helps Maduro in his defense. When we come back, I want to talk to you, Karen, about something that's near and dear to your heart, somebody who's a prosecutor or is acting like they're one. We have the continued impersonation of a U.S. attorney by Lindsey Halligan, and judges in the Eastern District of Virginia are tired of it, and they are pissed off. And now we've got a Trump judge, Judge Novak, who's done something about it. So we'll tell people how we got in this mess and what judges are doing to try to get us out of it. And then I want to touch on the Epstein files and the fact that, leave that headline up for a minute. See, even that headline's wrong. If the denominator is 2 million, then it's 1%. If the denominator is 5.2 million documents, is what they said a week ago, then it's 0.05% or less. And that's our issue here. Where are the missing documents? Because last week during the holidays, Todd Blanche posted on social media and let it be known that they found not 1 million, they found 5.2 million documents, which represents about 50 million pages that they needed to review with 400 lawyers around the clock, right? But then when they made a filing in front of Judge Engelmeyer in New York, the number shrank in a week. Why? How? Where did they go? We're going to talk about all that when we come back from our break. In the meantime, if you like what's happening on Legal AF, you want to be here for, you see these developing stories. We can barely keep up. We got 12 hours of programming a day on Legal AF, another half a dozen on Midas Touch on the law side. And I do 2 Substacks lives a day. That's 12 p.m. and 7:45 p.m. And there we're barely able to keep up. But we want to bring this to you. We need you in our audience. Come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Think about becoming a paid member there or a member or subscriber there. Legal AF, the Substack, where I'm doing 2 lives a day. We get a couple of thousand people just joining at 12 and 7:45 p.m. Eastern time for updates in the law on Substack Live. And I'm running that 20% sale on annual membership, Substack Live. This is, people say, how can we support you? How can we, quote unquote, invest in you? In Legal AF, this is the way to do it. And then, of course, we've got our sponsors. And here's another word from our pro-democracy sponsors. This episode, it's brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar, brain and body fuel you need to win your day. As someone who's constantly switching between research, recording, my family, and long work days, I rely on snacks that keep me sharp without spiking my blood sugar. And IQ Bar has genuinely delivered. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is the easiest way to try it all. 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe coffee sticks. Every product is clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients, packed with brain-friendly ingredients like magnesium and lion's mane. The new year gives us all a chance to reset. Maximize your brain and body's potential with IQ Bars, protein bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all 3. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the ultimate sampler pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text Legal AF to 64,000. Text Legal AF to 64,000. That's Legal AF to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Welcome back to Legal AF at the midweek with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and Michael Popok. So, Karen, you've dealt with large productions of documents in your career at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Having to diligently turn over files and documents and other things as part of your responsibility to give the defense what they need or what they don't need. for their case. So what do you make of this constantly shape-shifting number of Epstein files yet to be reviewed? 1 million 2 weeks ago, 5.2 million documents during the holidays. And now they tell Judge Engelmeyer in a new filing that it's down to 2 million. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, anything I say about this would be pure speculation because they aren't explaining. And they really should be the ones to be explaining to the court exactly how many documents there are, what their process is, what they're going through, and how they're going through this, and why the numbers keep changing, and why they are finding more and more documents. I think part of it is because the prosecutors who worked on the case, in particular Maureen Comey, who worked on the Ghislaine Maxwell case, they fired her because of her last name, certainly not because of her talent and her abilities. She's widely regarded as a phenomenal prosecutor who everybody respects except Donald Trump. And again, it's because of who her father is. So I'm sure if she were there and she could be a part of this, I'm sure we would have a much clearer, better idea of what's happening. But now they're trying to recreate and figure out what exactly they have. And look, these materials are everything from the FBI and other investigative reports, including local law enforcement who would have investigated crimes, say in Florida or other places that were reported where these victims reported crimes, things like grand jury materials, interview transcripts. There's going to be lots of photographs and other types of video and photo evidence that would have been gathered and collected, electronic records and communications like emails. There's probably thousands and thousands of emails or text messages, flight information and logs of people being flown, not just on Epstein's private plane, but people who took commercial jets, whether they be the victims or people traveling to be with Epstein. And of course, there's financial record that they're going to be looking at, whether it's receipts or credit cards or bank statements, because you want to corroborate everything someone is saying. And so there's going to be lots of that kind of material, and it's going to be all over the place. If they're investigating other people who were protecting Donald Trump, then there could be accountants' records and tax records and that kind of financial records that you're going to look for to see who profited off of this, whether there was any sort of profit motive or, again, financial transactions that took place. So whatever is not classified material, and I can't really imagine why anything would be classified in this investigation, and things that don't reveal who the victims are, unless, of course, they consent to that. That's really the thing that they have to do is they have to protect the victims' identities, whether it's their faces or other addresses, phone numbers, other personal identifying information that has to be redacted. But they know who the victims are. You could do a quick word search through these documents and it'll pull up every single instance where that particular name is located, and then you redact it, and then you look there and see, is there a phone number, is there an address, is there an email address, is there a social media account, all the other things that you would write down when you're talking to somebody. So it's not like they're going to go through 10 million documents page by page and, turn the page. They can do this through a lot of it through word searches. And that's one way that you do it. You can do it through all sorts of ways. You could put in people's phone numbers, email addresses. You can search any way you want and then redact that information out. But I think part of it is, I don't know that they know what they have. And I think part of it's incompetence. Part of it's because, like I said, they fired the people who know what it is. And I think part of it because it's Donald Trump. And frankly, I think I wouldn't put anything past him. Part of it's going to be to try to protect people that he wants to protect. And maybe they're trying to figure out ways to do that. So, look, one of the big exceptions to the Epstein Transparency Act, which is, you could drive a truck through this exception, is that anything that they identify as part of an ongoing investigation, they don't have to turn over. Well, of course, you're going to see that with any Republicans potentially, right? And only turn over the Democrats. So, which is what they've already done so far. So let's see if they do the right thing. They asked for, I think it was 7 more days to get back to the court. And but they better start explaining in detail what their process is and why there is these conflicting numbers, and why it is that sometimes they think they have 5.2 million records, and then somewhere else they have 1 million, and somewhere else they have 2 million. They better start. If I was the judge here, I'd want somebody with information and knowledge to come in and talk about exactly what their process is, what they're doing, what they have, and what they're determining is going to be kept out because they either don't think they have to turn it over, or they're choosing not to turn it over, or are they redacting things. I'd like to know in detail, if I was the judge, what their process is, and really hold their feet to the fire, because this just seems a little disorganized and frankly clown car-ish for even the Trump administration.
I don't know why it's, they just feel like they can just insult the intelligence of federal judges and the American people. We can read. We know the difference between a $5.2 million document number by Todd Blanche and then 2 million ending up in a federal court filing without a footnote that even explains the delta. And if I'm the judge, I certainly, as you laid out, I'd want to get to the bottom of what appears to be 3.2 million missing Epstein files. No one trusts the Trump administration. We know they didn't review 3.2 million in a week and decide they were redundant or copies or weren't relevant, at all. So that didn't happen. So either they had their number wrong before, based on what? That would be the questioning that I would do if I were the judge. How'd you come up with your original 5.2 million? What was that based on? And then they just blithely list in their filing with Judge Engelmeyer, well, we've looked in these various places, we won't tell you where, and there's mismatch in record keeping systems, so it's been difficult. It's going to take us a little bit longer. But this glaring 2 million number just sitting on the page, and we're all who's close to the issues like us on Legal AF and Midas Touch, we look at it, we're like, where's the 3.2 million more documents? And you just can't take them. Even a Department of Justice that didn't have its reputation and credibility in shreds, you would still be like, you just said 5.2. How is it 2? And we had a funny I'll play the clip here in a minute. We had a funny moment when James Carville joined Legal AF in the Court of History yesterday to talk about Venezuela and other things. And he, I think, tongue slightly in cheek, but he gave credit to Legal AF and Court of History for keeping the reporting so trained on Donald Trump about Epstein and the scandal and not letting it die. He thinks that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump, in a wag the dog moment, went into Venezuela, was to change the conversation, because you see nobody's talking about Epstein this week. In fact, let me play that clip, which I thought was a sort of a backhanded compliment for the work that we're doing on Legal AF and Court of History. Let's play that clip.
Thank you, Sidney. Thank you, Sean. Love the show. I just before we get started, I think this show bears some responsibility for the Venezuelan incursion, because I think that this is done in response to Epstein. And no show has brought more Epstein facts alike in a Court of History. And if you just do a word search for the 5 days before this, how many Epstein references there were, and then 5 days after that, how many Epstein references there were. This is pretty clear. And in his mind, this worked brilliantly.
Yeah,
That his work, mission accomplished, as he might say. He's completely wrung the story away from Epstein. You have the usual 15% of Democrats saying, well, this is actually a good move. This is really going to help the United States. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maduro's a bad guy. Sure, he's a bad guy. And what about the other 15 bad guys around the world?
Well, I have a friend in Hollywood who's a famous screenwriter, won an Oscar, and his view is this is going to go so bad that Trump is going to switch to promoting the Epstein files. That's the way
I'm going to steal that.
That's a good one.
And I got good news for those that follow the Court of History and all the hard work that Sidney Blumenthal and Professor Sean Wilentz do. Every week, we are making them into, officially today, a audio podcast. So they will be on, you can now find them on Apple and Spotify under Court of History, another Legal AF podcast, and Unprecedented, a podcast that I do every week with Dina Dahl about the United States Supreme Court. Also now, as of today, a Legal AF podcast up on wherever you get your podcast from on audio for those that listen to us in the car or on their phones or whatever. So Unprecedented and Court of History both now up on the audio podcast, and that's the way for you to support what we do and our contributors and people that spend a lot of time briefing our audience. And it's supporting the podcast like this one, Legal AF, the grandpappy, grandmammy of them all when it comes to law and politics. Been sitting here for almost 6 years doing this work with Karen and Ben Mycelis. And that's why we're at the top of the charts, because of our fervent support of our audience and the community that we've built. So audio podcast, plug in Legal AF, leave a 5-star review and comments. We do read the comments, as we do on a night like tonight. And come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Support us there. We now have a new paid membership level for people that want to, quote unquote, invest in Legal AF. We don't have outside investors. We really are crowd funded, people funded, if you will, people supported. And the size that we got, 1 million subscribers already, has helped us onboard the American Civil Liberties Union, Democracy Forward, get the interviews with senators and congresspeople, and bring in the contributors that we have, because we're legit. And we're legit because you made us legit at the intersection of law and politics. And then, of course, we've got the Legal AF Substack. That's only been around 10 months. We're bopping around between number 1 and number 7 in rising U.S. politics, number 40 or so overall on all Substacks, and there are tens of thousands of them. And we're doing some really creative and interesting things there. Like I'm doing a live twice a day, sometimes with guests, sometimes they bring in guests. Like, I'll give you an example. Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, was in the arraignment for Maduro. And as soon as he popped out, literally within moments of him listening to the proceedings, watching things and giving us color about it, he came out, joined me on a Substack live, and we had 2,100 people kind of at that moment. We then used it as a video, but 2,100 people asking questions. And that's the kind of stuff you can do on Substack you can't do in YouTube. We love YouTube, and it's great for kind of magazine style, deeper thought, deeper analysis with assets and things. But like in real life, something just happened and we got one of our people out in the field who can talk to us, or get Sky Perryman on, or get the ACLU on, or get Rob Bonta or the Attorney General on. That's where we live. And so we've got paid membership there that's now on sale for 20% off for annual membership, and becoming a regular member is great as well. So Karen, first show of the new year. We always love giving you the last words. What are you going to pull together for our audience tonight?
I'm going to say 2 things. Number 1, I have a new second favorite podcast that I want to make a plug for. It's called The Intersection with Michael Popok, and it's phenomenal. And I really think
I forgot that one.
But really, it's worth, I think I want everyone who watches Legal AF, it's something that you should really watch The Intersection or listen to it. It's a phenomenal podcast. As I said, it's my second favorite, with Legal AF being my first. But I want to end tonight with really thinking about just, again, that video that I watched that Ben posted on Jan 6 about just what those officers went through. I just can't get that image out of my head, and how terrible. Yeah, exactly. There it is. It is so unbelievable, and what they were going through that that whole insurrection. I just think is something I just really want to think about and send my thoughts out to all the law enforcement and others, members of Congress, et cetera, who were traumatized, frankly, and who were heroes and who stood up for democracy and were there that day. And I also can't stop thinking about that little 6-year-old girl in Minnesota who came home from school today only to be told that she no longer has a mother. And I'm just brokenhearted over that. So, I don't mean to end not on a positive note, but I just, it's where my heart is right now. And I'm sending thoughts and prayers to all of those people. Happy New Year. And we're in this all together because we are a community and we're going to keep fighting together. Happy New Year.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, sometimes we have to end a little bit on a dour note, but we are together as a community and we appreciate you. Thanks for being here Saturday with Ben Meiselas and me. And thanks for all you do to support what we do. Without it, we would be literally nothing, just people mumbling to ourselves on the subway or on the street over a cup of coffee. But you give us purpose, and we really do appreciate you. Shout out to the Mightiest Mighty and the Legal AFers.